What do we got here in the case?
Here's one of the early facsimiles of the Gutenberg Bible.
Oh, wow.
Wish we had an original, but hey, that's beautiful. I mean, and when you talk about abstract typography, us looking at German letter forms
Is
in
abstract.
Latin, it's all abstract, but beautiful to see. And the book mostly look like that, and then at the opening of each book of the Bible, you'll have this beautiful work.
Illumination.
The illumination that's on there.
So you're going to give me rip me a couple of pages out of there to?
Hey, one page of the Gutenberg Bible, an original, is worth $80,000 to $100,000 without illustration.
So I'd have to go up on my prices if I use some of that
Go
material.
visit the Huntington Library and just ask to borrow a page.
Yeah, right.
Good luck.
Good luck with that, brother.
Believe it or not, one page of the Gutenberg Bible was up on eBay a year and a half ago.
No kidding.
I looked at it and I go, well, that's original. And I checked it and I thought, one of my stories of being a curator of a printing museum, if somebody actually donated a Gutenberg Bible to us worth $50 to $100 million,
Yeah.
what would I do?
I don't know. What would you do?
I'd sell it.
to raise money.
Raise the
for,
money.
for
and
your
then
project.
I would buy 2 pages. Because what do you ever see when you see a Gutenberg Bible?
Is
in the
only
world?
2 pages
You
that
see
are
2
open.
pages. This is Hollywood. We could actually make this happen. And so this one
Yeah,
showed
you just
up.
lay them on those 2 pages and it
they
looks
flip
like it's the whole Bible.
Yeah. So we can make it look like anything you want it to be.
Right.
But that page went up on eBay. And the nature of eBay is all you need is 2 idiots. Any auction just needs
2
idiots. And so I got in
one
on the
to
auction.
put it on and one to buy it off.
I was at 5,000, and then it was at 8,000, 15,000, and we're getting closer to the final days, and it hit $20,000, $22,000. At which point I realized I probably need to tell my wife. So
it was just business up until then.
yeah, it was
then
like
it became,
I know what it's worth, and then the auction went on, and it sold for $38,000.
Wow.
Which, in hindsight,
Was still only half
I would have
price.
bought it at $38,000. The only problem is I would have been idiot number 2 or 3 that then pushed it up to $75,000. One more bid, one more bid, one more bid.
Right.
And
then off it
then I
goes.
still have to talk to the wife. So that's just not a good scenario.
You'd have to apologize to the wife at
Yeah.
that point.
Yeah. So the Gutenberg Bible. So we do a lot. We actually cast type here the way Gutenberg did. We show the whole process of casting the type. That's the secret of Gutenberg, was developing the tool that would make the metal letters that were then used to print in the books. And his tools to make the type remained unchanged for 400 years.
Wow.
400 years. Middle of the 19th century, they're still casting type the way Gutenberg did.
Yeah.
The printing
Until
technology
somebody
was
dreamt up a
advancing.
new idea.
They figured out how to mechanize his process.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of interesting, right? Because one genius comes up with something, and it's hundreds of years later before the next genius says, I think I can improve on that. Because otherwise, they just want to leave it like it is.
Yeah, if it works.
If it works. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's interesting.
Very
Cool.
good. Hey, that even reminds me of the story, even with Gutenberg. So Gutenberg's developing the printing press.
Right.
Okay, and before that, the scribes are taking quills and writing book out.
Right.
And it takes 3 to 5 years to write a Bible.
Right.
So Gutenberg comes on the scene and he develops his machine that we call the printing press.
Right.
You got to remember that Gutenberg was German,
Right.
so he called it my faster writing machine.
Right. My faster writing
The
machine.
word in German is mein schnell schreiben Fabrik.
My schnell
One-
schreiben Fabrik.
One long word, no spaces. Space is not efficient to a German. So
Right.
it illustrates what you're just mentioning there about the nature of invention, which is not that you go into a room without any input and then come out with an invention. You take ideas that exist and then you
keep
modify it.
improving
You
on
keep
them.
improving, keep changing, and all of a sudden you have an invention.
So how many scribes did Gutenberg put out of business?
He changed their profession.
Right.
What had happened was this explosion of printing. So Gutenberg in 5 years, here's one Gutenberg Bible here in 2 volumes.
Right.
That is known as a lectern Bible. This is meant to be not on your lap for your morning Bible reading,
But on the lectern.
which I know you would be reading. But it's on the lectern for the front of the church or the university and all that. 3 to 5 years it took Gutenberg to print his Bibles.
Right.
He printed 180, but that year is 1440, 1450, 1455. In the next 50 years after that, take a guess how many books you think were printed all over Europe.
Million.
12 million.
12 million. Wow.
Is that amazing? All the books written by hand during Gutenberg's entire lifetime, by all the bald scribes and all the
All the way up
monasteries,
until that time?
from 1400 to 1450, during Gutenberg's lifetime, the scribes of Europe produced 20,000 books.
Wow.
Then the next 50 years, you go from 20,000 books to 12 million books. So
Right.
when you start answering the question of, did the scribes lose, they weren't writing as much books, but there was more work that needed to be done in printing because the explosion, the exponential growth of the printed word, which then changed society. It's the advancement of Western civilization and the Reformation and the Renaissance.
And witch burning.
All that, yeah. Well, but then you print a book about it.
Because
you print a book about
But that was what the next big books were after that, was about witches and so forth like that.
Oh, there
right?
were books on all
Because they wanted to put books out that everybody would be, kind of wowed by.
Yeah.
And certainly witchcraft was one of those things. I remember reading an article about that.
Yeah.
That was some of the earliest books that they started printing.
Yeah.
Very interesting.
Great stuff. Gutenberg, this is why he was the man of the millennium in the year
The
2000.
man of the millennium, that's right.
Because printing is the foundation of Western civilization. Yeah, we're
But
still talking.
also, that was kind of in relation to the invention of paper as well, right?
Yeah, well, the invention of paper,
At least in Europe.
well, the invention of paper is credited to the Chinese back around the
course.
1st century. And invention of printing is credited to the Chinese.
Right, right.
Uh,
Yeah, but I'm talking about European paper generation in Italy
Uh-huh.
and that sort of thing, as it moved through from China through the
Are you familiar
Muslim
with that
world.
process, the progress?
Yeah.
So the Chinese invented the paper, the greatest invention of human history.
Right,
And before the invention of true paper by the Chinese, you have in the ancient world the Egyptian papyrus,
right,
which is technically pre-paper, but that's the paper of the ancient world. That's what allowed the Roman Empire to exist.
right, exactly.
You can control and govern and deal with a massive governmental organization because you had paper. So the Chinese invent paper, and they held on to the secret very tightly. It's like a state secret. Until a band of Arabs stormed into a northern Chinese papermaking town in the 8th century, and they had a fight. And they won. And they
Right.
stole the papermakers.
And
Not
the
machines,
technology.
the people.
Right,
They hauled them off to North Africa where they squeezed the knowledge of how to make paper out of them. Then, now the Arabs know how to make paper and do math, which is a good combination.
right,
The first paper wasn't made in Europe until the 13th century in Muslim-controlled Spain. The first sheet of paper wasn't made in Germany until the year of Gutenberg's birth in 1400.
right.
And so for them, the interesting...
And then Fabriano too
in Italy, yes.
Right.
So
uh-huh.
they were major paper making, both the state and that as a company that lasted hundreds and hundreds of years.
Now that was replacing what?
So that's what I mentioned to you. Is that's what's replacing the material for writing books in the Middle Ages up through the time of Gutenberg, which is vellum or parchment, animal skin.
Right.
So what replaced papyrus was the Roman development of animal skins.
Right,
Very, you take the skin, they stretch it, and they scrape it very thin, so it's almost the thickness of paper. You
right.
know, it's
So
wonderful stuff to
where
write
you-
on.
That's
So-
where you get the word palimpsest, right?
Yes.
Right.
So-
Which
and
is scraping that off and then
Uh-huh.
writing on it again.
writing again. But even just getting it to where it's a writable surface is there. And in fact, let me just show you while we're over here. Grab it. All right, so here,
Oh, right.
Cecil, this is from about the year of Christopher Columbus.
I've got a couple of sheets of this stuff in my art collage collection.
But it just feels like thick paper.
Right, right. But it's
it lasts a long time.
Right.
Now, the challenge that Gutenberg had was they had paper, but they didn't like paper.
Right.
Because good books were written on vellum.
Exactly.
That was a good book. Paper comes from the infidels.
Right.
It comes from the Muslim countries. And we don't want to put the Bible on paper from the infidels.
Exactly. That doesn't work.
You saw the size of the Gutenberg Bible.
Right, right.
Multiply that. They printed 30 copies, deluxe edition, on vellum, 150 on paper.
How many animals was that?
Multiply that. How many calfskins were required? That's 8,000 calfskins for 30 Gutenberg Bibles.
Wow.
Gutenberg basically lost his shorts on the project. Right. Ended up borrowing money in the development of the printing press and the typecasting tools. Ended up going basically what we call belly up. He's bankrupt and is sued at the end of the printing project, and Gutenberg lost his presses, his tools, everything.
Oh my God.
And really quickly they got to, like, paper isn't so bad.
Yeah,
and,
right.
And you had less and less books on vellum and more on paper.
Right. And I guess you know about how paper became important for security purposes for the traders going up and down.
You're talking about watermarking.
Not only watermarking, but the fact that once you write on it, you can't remove the writing like you can on the vellum, where you can change the numbers and so forth.
You can scratch because the ink is on the surface.
Right.
When you're writing on paper, it's actually in the paper.
In.
Yeah.
So that created this extra layer of security for all of the numbers for the
traders.
The traders.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the other one I was mentioning there was the watermarking.
Right.
So
watermarking.
When you're making the paper, if you can change the thickness when it's still wet sheet by adding a wire or adding a design in wire, you can put a mark, and they learned that early on.
Right.
It's like on Gutenberg's Bible, we know how many times he went back and increased the size of the edition because he bought more paper, and the watermarks change.
Right, exactly.
And you can see that on there. And that watermarking, we use it today in our paper currency. We have watermarking, which is very hard to replicate. You mentioned there Fabriano, the mill in Italy, who's the world leaders in watermarks.
Right.
Beautiful, beautiful watermarks.
Beautiful.
Yeah. So, yeah,
okay.
So this is welcome to the museums and the stories we tell here. And,
well, I appreciate your taking the time with me, and
absolutely,
it's been a total joy.
We only scratched the surface.
Yeah.
We could sit here and talk for quite a long time.
For another week at least.
Yeah, we'll probably need some bourbon for that.
Yeah, probably so.
See you here at the Printing Museum. All right.
Thanks for everybody.
Thanks for coming in. All right.
Thank you, brother.
We'll see you at the collage.
Okay, collage workshop coming up.
Okay, I gotta say.
Yeah. Oh,
hey guys, if you're interested in signing up, be sure to contact me.
I saw one hanging around,
like
I
this
didn't
video,
want to
be
take
sure
it
to like and
without
follow.
asking you, but I never got one of the Robert Smith.
So, hey, if you're
I've got
interested in coming
got
to
'em for
this
you, yeah.
collage workshop, be sure to give us some contact and hit the like button and whatever else you can do on this page to give me thumbs
How's
up
it-
and
what's the
hearts and
registration looking like?
whatever else, smiley face,
people
whatever it is.
so far.
Okay, thank you.
Cars?
No,
Oh,
40 people.
And thanks to Mark especially for such a fantastic job, and we're really looking forward to working together with doing the exhibition and the workshop. Bye now.
All right.
Okay.
All right, there you go.